Hi, good evening, everyone. Is it audible to everyone? Can you hear me? Yeah, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Yes, as continue to that yesterday's one, the which we are trying to understand it, creating the VPC, and then within that VPC with the public subnets and the private subnets concepts. Yeah, like the public subnet that is the external the users where yeah, all the requests that will be allowed to enter into that the public subnets, but private subnets that is only internal where we don't allow that directly the public access. That is internal point of view. Yeah, like a databases if you are launching that, yeah, we use the private subnets or front end layers if you are launching that, or load balancers if you are configuring, then we define that public subnets for it. Yeah, this was a concept which we are trying to understand it, creating the VPC and then creating the subnets. I just created the VPC and with two public subnets and the two private subnets in different availability zones. Yeah, so created VPC with one CADR, that is a 10.0.0.0/16, and then it is represented in this diagram one public subnet, but we have created the two public subnets in the two availability zones and the two private subnets in the two availability zones we have created. That is so far which we have done. But subnets point of view, if you just conclude that, what is the concept we have in the subnets is, yeah, whenever we create a subnet, from the subnet, AWS is going to reserve the 5 IP addresses, the first four and the last one IP address in each subnet. Suppose, yeah, if you try to understand this, what about these 5 IP addresses is, if CADI block is defined with 10.0.0.0/24 with the subnet. So from this subnet with the CADR, whatever we have defined, the first IP address, that is a 10.0.0.0, that will be used for the network address, and 0.1 reserved by AWS for the VPC router, and 0.2 reserved by AWS for mapping to Amazon provided DNS, and 0.3 reserved by AWS for future use case, and the last IP address, that is 0.255, that is for network broadcast address. Yeah, whenever we create any subnet with /24 or any CADR, if you have used about it, first four IP addresses and the last IP address that is getting used by that is reserved for AWS one. Yeah, that's why we see that like a 5 minus the devices in each subnet. Yeah, network broadcast address, that is the last one, and AWS does not support broadcast in a VPC, therefore the address is reserved. Yeah, suppose example, if you need the 29 IP addresses for EC2 instances, you cannot choose a subnet of size /27 because it is going to give the 32 IP addresses only. But you need to plan it 29 if you need it, 29 plus 5, that is a 34 IP address you need to plan it. As per the 34 addresses, you need to use the CDR. But if you use the 27, you will get it only 27 IP addresses. So the 5 IP address that will be reserved for AWS. So that is the concept. That's why we see that whenever we create the subnets, yeah, there are the subnet just we have created public and private. We see this, we got it like only 251 IP addresses. So the 5 IP addresses that is reserved for AWS from each subnet. Yeah, the next, now we have defined that VPC and subnets. But next, what is the component or the VPC components that we need to create? It is Internet Gateway. So what is the purpose of this Internet Gateway? Yeah, Internet Gateways helps about our VPC instances connect with the Internet. As in home network edition, which we are trying to understand it, in the home network edition, that is about a modem, Internet service provider. From that service provider, we need to use the modem, and the modem has to be attached. The same way, for about our subnets, for about our EC2 instances, which we are launching in the subnets, but how do we get it internet? Yes, if we'd like to get it internet to the resources which we are launching in the subnet, we need to use it Internet Gateway. That helps about our VPC instance connect with the internet, and it scales horizontally and is a high availability and redundant. Yes, this gateway is the supporting that horizontal scalability and high availability also, and must be created separately from VPC. Yeah, so for each VPC we need to create a separate internet gateway. So one VPC can only be attached to one internet gateway and vice versa. Yeah, one internet gateway we can create it and we can attach to that the one VPC only. And yes, like the same thing, to that one VPC we can attach that only one internet gateway. Yeah, internet gateway is also a NAT for the instances that have a public IPv4. Yeah, this is also going to work like as a NAT interface to get it like IPv4 addresses. Yeah, internet gateways on their own do not allow internet access. The routing tables must also be edited. Yes, internet gateway, if we just create it and if you use it to the VPC, then we don't get that internet directly to the EC2 instances. We need to define routing tables. Yeah, now next what we are going to do this is, now we have created VPC with the subnet, right? Public and private subnets in the different availability zones. What do we do that is, now we go for creating one internet gateway and we'll attach that one to that VPC. As one internet gateway, we can attach to that only one VPC. Like that, only one VPC can VPC can have that only one internet gateway. But what is the usage of that internet gateway? That is helping to get it external access. So like now we are using that EC2 instance's public IP address and we are able to connect to the EC2 instance, right? From any system. There's nothing but that is public. Yeah, from about our system, we are able to access that the EC2 instance which is launched in the particular subnet. But how you are, how you are able to connect it? Yeah, the internet gateways are helping that to allow public access. But internet gateway, as we're talking, that it is not going to provide that directly internet to the resources which we are launching in the subnet. What we need to do that says, suppose if I launch the EC2 instance in the subnet, do we get it internet? No, we don't get it. We need to do that routing table. So we need to use a routing table and we need to associate the public subnet. That means the resources which are launching in the public subnet should be routed through the internet gateway. Yeah, the requests which are coming, that's from the www, that is through internet gateway. This routing table is going to pass to this subnet. This is the public subnet. Now with this routing table and mapping to this, what's going to happen? The EC2 instance can get it internet. Yeah, now let's go back and let's look into that. That's creating internet gateway and as well as associating this to that the subnets. Yeah, the first let's go for creating internet gateway. Yes, this is the internet gateway. So if you just observe that here, internet gateway section, already as we are talking about it, for each VPC, one internet gateway that will be having that. For each VPC, one internet gateway, and we have this already one internet gateway, and that has been attached to this VPC. But what about this VPC? This VPC is default VPC. Yeah, the 9C1F. This is about the default VPC. So, the before what are the instances we are creating, how the instances are getting internet is. So this is the internet gateway which is supporting that, and this internet gateway has been attached to this default VPC. Now let's go for the creating the internet gateway to the our VPC. Yeah, first let's create an internet gateway. So gateway creation is straightforward, so nothing the big deal. So just to give the name this is RNS internet gateway. And yes, you can define the tags if you want to. Yes, let's go for the creating internet gateway. Yes, it has been created, the internet gateway. But gateway has to be attached to the, as we are understanding this point, now we have created internet gateway. But internet gateway has to be attached to the VPC. Let's attach the internet gateway to the VPC. Yeah, this is about our RNS internet gateway, which is not attached to any VPC. Let's select this and go to the actions and attach to VPC. So now here you can select that to which VPC. Yes. So this is the VPC which is not having any internet gateway. Yes. Now select that the VPC which you have created and attach internet gateway. Yeah. Now in internet gateway section, yes, this is about our RNS internet gateway and which has been attached to that RNS VPC. Now what we have done? So we have just done that internet gateway creation and internet gateway attaching to the VPC, which we have created that. But why do we need to have this internet gateway? Yes, like if we need that internet to the instances which are launching in the VPC, you need to have it internet gateway or any external communications which are required to enter into that, or external resources entering or accessing that's about our resources. Yes, you need to have it first internet gateway. Okay, now we have defined this internet gateway and we have attached that to the VPC. And as we are talking about it, by just creating that internet gateway, we don't get that internet directly to the EC2 instances which are launching in the subnet. But how do we get it that internet to the EC2 instances which are launching in the subnet? So we need to use the routing table. So we need to create a routing table for it. But how to create a routing table for it? Yeah, now let's move into that the routing table creation. But routing table you are creating is nothing but two mappings. What are those two mappings? One side we need to map it internet gateway. That means the requests which are coming through this router, through this gateway, or which we can say the routing, we need to allow that to enter into the public subnet. So routing table we are defining is nothing but two approaches. One is, yes, routes we need to define it. Here, which one is the routing option? Internet gateway. And another, this side, what we need to define that? Which subnets that should you want to route the request to this. Yes, the requests which are coming this through the internet gateway, we are going to route those requests to the public subnet. Yes, in this public subnet, what are the EC2 instances which you launch it, or what are the resources you are going to create it? That's we are routing to that. Yeah, to those resources, we are routing that through the routing table. Yeah, now let me go for creating one routing table for the public subnet. Yes, this is for the public subnet. One routing table mapping with the internet gateway and the subnet. Let's go ahead and define the routing table. Yeah, so for VPC we have created, and within that VPC subnets we have created, and then we have created internet gateway, and internet gateway we have attached to the VPC. But this internet gateway, the requests which are coming, we need to route to this public subnet. But how to map it to these two internet gateway and subnets? By using routing table. Yes, let's go for this creating routing table. By default, we got the each VPC is going to give that one routing table, but let's go for creating custom routing table. Yeah, routing table here. Yes, let me define this as RNS public routing table. This is we are going to use it for the public subnets. And in which VPC? Yes, select that's RNS VPC. And the tag says name. This is RNS public routing table. Okay, that's fine. So let's create routing table. Okay, so routing table has been created. Yeah, this is about public routing table. But here, routing table you have created is nothing but, so what is the purpose of it? The requests which are coming from the internet gateway, yeah, the requests which are coming from through this internet gateway, we need to route into that subnets. Which is subnets? Which is subnets we can use it? Public subnets. So how do we define this one is, if we go to the routing table and if we select this routing table, and here you see this option, routes option and subnet association option. So if you just observe the routes section, so what is the CADR we have used for this VPC? 10.0.0.0/16. That means the anyone is accessing that's within this the VPC. Yes, it will be allowed, no issues. They are local to each other, local network. But if anyone is coming this from the external is that is a 0000, any IP address, then we need to route into that public subnets. Yeah, in the routes option, edit the routes. Already we have the VPC route. This is the default one and the local one. So within the VPC and within the subnet, what are the resources we have? Those resources to access, those are all the local to each other. We don't need to have the separate routing rules for it. By default, they're all locally, they can communicate it. But now we are going to define the routing rule from the destination. Destination is any IP address, or if you have this any CDR. CDR also you can define it, but we are defining the public. All IP addresses. All IP addresses. What is the target? So here we are using that internet gateway. So through this RNS internet gateway, whatever we have created, yes, any IP address through this internet gateway, that is a definition here. 10.0.0.0.0, that is okay, the local, no issues. You don't need to define any other separate rule for it. But the other IP addresses or all IP addresses, we are allowing that through this internet gateway. Already internet gateway is attached to the VPC. So this is the routing rule we are defining. So now, any IP address through this internet gateway, which are receiving, we need to route to that public subnet. So what is the concept here? Now just we have defined routing table we have created, and we have defined that internet gateway, any IP address which are receiving that is 0000 through this internet gateway, we are going to routing through this routing table to the public subnet. Yes, let's associate the public subnet now. Yeah, so if you go to the next section, subnet associations, and here there are all the subnets which are not associated to that any routing table. Now you can edit the subnet associations. Only whatever the subnets you are planning as a public. Yes, this is my public subnet in availability zone 1A, and this is another public subnet which is in 1B. Yeah, whatever or what are all the subnets you have which are as a public, that's you can select it and you can associate it to this routing table. Now if you just observe that, yes, through this internet gateway, any IP address through this internet gateway which are receiving the request to about our VPC, we are routing to these two subnets, either 1A or 1B. And they're all the CIDRs for it, the subnets CIDRs. They're all about our devices. Have got this point? Routing table creation. So in this diagram, what we have done is, yes, through internet, what are the requests which are coming through this internet gateway, and we have defined the routing table and mapping to that public subnet, which is in that's one availability zone and which is available in another availability zone. Two subnets we have associated to this routing table, and routing is through internet gateway. Yes, any IP address that is the 000 IP address through this internet gateway, which are receiving through this routing table, we are routing to that either 1A or 1B subnets, which are in that two different availability zones. Is it clear about that? Okay, now what do we do this is we launch that one EC2 instance in the public subnet, and whether we are able to access it or not, we'll check it that. Yeah, let me go back to that EC2 section and we'll check it. The EC2 instance launching in that subnet, public subnet, either 1A you can take it or 1B you can take it. So let me go ahead, the launching instance in that public subnet, one of the public subnet, and then we'll see the internet it is coming it or not, whether we are able to access it that instance or not. Yes, instances, let's launch the instance. This instance we are going to use it as a public. I'm just defining that. Let me define that PB. This is we are going to launch it in the public subnets, and choose that AMI ID instead of the Linux 2023. Just go for that Linux 2 AMI. Already we are facing some issues with the 2023. And yes, instance type T2 micro, that's fine. And key pair, yes, I need to have that one key pair. Let me create a new key pair. This is to test VPC. Yeah, RNS VPC. Let me create a new key pair. Yeah, that is downloading. That's fine. PEM file. Yeah, so in the network settings, before we didn't do that any network settings whenever we are launching that instances. Now, if you go back to that edit option, now we are planning to launch this EC2 instance in RNS VPC. And in which subnet we have the total 4 subnets. So 2 public we have defined in 1A and 1B, and 2 private we have defined. Yes, you can choose it public subnets. Now this is we are going to test it. Public subnet already associated with routing table, and routing table is routing the request from the internet gateway. Yeah, I'm going to use it. Yeah, this public subnet 1A, that means availability zone AP South 1A. Or you can choose it another 1B also, public subnet, but it must be public subnet. Here in this test case, you should not use the private subnet. Private subnet still we didn't configure, we just created, that's all. But we didn't define any routing tables and all that. Yeah, subnet. And by default, auto assigning the public IP address. Yes, it is disabled. That means we don't get that public IP address, but we need that public IP address for this EC2 instance. Let's enable this. And security group, the selecting that existing. Do you have any existing one? No, the default it is giving because this the security group is a scope to the VPC. We just created the VPC and we don't have any security groups. So let me create it. This is SH security group. And with the rule, we are allowing that 22 port. Yeah, that's fine. 22 is enough. Okay. So these are security group, which we are going to use it for this EC2 instance. And we are launching the EC2 instance in our VPC in this public subnet 1A. 1A is nothing but availability zone 1A. Or if you need that 1B, 1B also you can choose it. Yeah, so that's about network settings. So VPC subnet. The subnet is not enabled to get it public IP address automatically. By default, public IP address is disabled, but we need that public IP address. Yes, enable this and create security group, key pair, and all that. Let's go for launching the instance. Now, what is the CADR we have used for the public subnet? 1A 10.0.1.0. That means now we are going to get it that private IP address to that EC2 instance from this CADR. Let's check it now. Yes, instance has been launched and this is public EC2 instance. Yeah, the public IP address has been assigned. Okay, so we're good. And private IP address, if you see that, this is from the 10.0.1. So what about this 10.0.1 public subnet 1A? Yeah, that is a 10.0.1. From that, one of the IP address, that is 104, has been taken and that has been assigned to this EC2 instance. And if you observe others in the network settings, or if you go to the down, so this is VPC, RNS VPC, which are created. And subnet ID, yes, this is the public subnet 1A. And this has been launched in the AP South 1A. In our own network, we have defined this EC2 instance launcher. Now now we got it public IP address, right? But you see this one observation, DNS name, we didn't get it that. Public DNS name, we didn't get it. But private DNS, we got it. Okay, fine. But public DNS is not assigned. But by default EC2 instance, if I launch it in the default VPC, yeah, any EC2 instance in the default VPC, then we will get it the public DNS also. But now, yes, what is the requirement is in this VPC, in our VPC, what are the TC2 instance which are launching that? Public DNS should be enabled. How do we enable that public DNS? Yeah, now if you go to the VPC section, that is VPC level configuration, by default public DNS is not enabled. Yeah, so you see this here in this VPC, this is about our RNS VPC, DNS host names disabled. So this property, so that is disabled, right? That's why we didn't get that public DNS name for to this EC2 instance. Okay, IP address we got it. That's we have enabled, right? While launching the EC2 instance, public IP address we have enabled. That's public IP address has been assigned, but DNS name is not assigned. So if you need that DNS names, then what we need to do this is at VPC level, yeah, select the VPC, go to the actions and edit VPC settings. And the DNS resolution already enabled. DNS resolution already enabled, but DNS host names is not enabled. Let's enable this option also. Enable DNS host names at VPC level and save this. Now, yes, DNS host names also has been enabled. And if you go back to the EC2 instance and if you refresh this, yeah, now we see this public IPv4 DNS also has been assigned to this EC2 instance. Yeah, so by default, DNS names are not assigning to the EC2 instances in the VPC. Yes, if you need it, yes, go to the VPC, enable that DNS host names, and automatically will get it. Host names assigning to this EC2. Okay, that is one configuration at VPC level. And now let's take it this IP address and let's try to connect it. Let me use it mobile XTEM. Yeah, let's log into this EC2 instance. Now whether we are able to log in it or not, let's check it. The EC2 user and key pair which we have defined RNS VPC. So let me choose it that. Yes, this is the PEM file. Let's select that. Yeah, now we are able to access the EC2 instance. And this is the IP address, private IP address. If you see that, this is the CDR we have defined 10.0.1 for the public subnet 1A. And public subnet 1B 10.0.2 we have assigned. Yes, this is the network ID and this is the device ID 104. Now whether we are able to get it that internet or not, the ping, let me ping this google.com. Yes, we are able to ping it. That means we are able to get the internet to this EC2 instance. Yeah, the EC2 instance we have launched in the public subnet and public subnet, which is defined with routing table and routing. I mean that it is routing the request from the internet gateway. That internet gateway is providing that internet to the EC2 instance. Is it clear about this? Now what we have done is, yeah, so in this public subnet, we have launched the EC2 instance And this EC2 instance is able to get internet, but how it is able to get internet? Through this internet gateway. Internet gateway is helping about it to get that all the net communications. But how did you, by default, internet gateway is not providing that internet to the EC2 instances. You need to use a routing table. Yes, this EC2 instance, if it is required any the external communication, yes, it is through this routing table, through this internet gateway, it is able to connect to external. Are you clear about this? Public subnet and with EC2 instance launching and routing table configuration and internet gateway configuration. Now here the point is one more point. The one configuration which we have done is the public DNS configuration. Another point which we have this is one more thing. Suppose whenever we are launching that EC2 instance, let me launch it one more. And in the network settings, if we just observe that, if we have selected about that RNS VPC and okay, the public subnet, either 1A or 1B or whatever it is. But auto assigning the public IP address by default, it is disabling. That means whenever you are launching that instance, if you need the public IP address, you need to make sure that is enabled. But I don't want to enable each and every time at EC2 instance level. Then whenever I'm creating that EC2 instance, by default, it has to choose it enable. So how do we define this property? This property is specific to the subnet level. Before DNS hostname association, that is at VPC level. But now we are talking about it. Yes, this is the public subnet which we have defined. But this public subnet, yes, any instance I'm launching that, it has to be assigned that public IP address to the EC2 instances. Yes, if you need this option, then go to the subnet. Yeah, go to the subnets. Then select that public subnet and actions. And here you can see that like edit subnet settings. And here enable auto assigning public IPv4 address. If you enable this option, enable public IPv4 address. So then whenever, okay, now if I just refresh this, let me cancel it and let me launch it freshly. Yeah, so if I go for launching that instance, now VPC is RNS VPC and subnet is public subnet 1A. Then you see this option automatically has been enabled. So now each and every time you don't need to make sure about that public IP address has been enabled for these instances or not. So that is automatically will be enabled. If you don't need that, you can disable this. So this option assigning the public IP address to the EC2 instance automatically, that is at subnet level. But the DNS names assigning to the EC2 instances, public DNS names assigning to the EC2 instance, that is at VPC level. VPC level settings, subnet level settings. Yeah, that's about understanding the public subnet and with routing table associating to that's a public subnet and routing from the internet gateway. Is it clear about this? about the public subnets. Okay, so now let's move into that. So defining the private subnets. Yeah, so if you go back to the, yeah, if you would like to launch the private subnets, so what is the gateway that we use it is? So for the public subnets, what is the gateway we are using? Through the routing table, internet gateway we have used. But private subnets, we don't use it that internet gateway. Internet gateway is nothing but that is directly public access, right? The subnet is public access. But if you're launching the database instances, or if you're launching that like backend components like cache systems or the reporting servers, we don't give it the front end directly. We'll manage it all those services backend in the secured networks. But if I launch that any EC2 instance in the private subnet, but how do I get it internet? You need to get that internet to the EC2 instance, right? If you like to update the patches, or if you like to update the packages, or if you like to install any softwares, internet is required. But directly we should not allow that from the external. Yes, all the internet communication directly we should not allow to the private subnets. Then how do we manage it that? Yeah, what is the gateway that we use? It is NAT gateway. Yeah, this is also AWS managed NAT with a higher bandwidth, better availability, and no admin is required just to create it, and that will be managed backend by the AWS team. Pay by the hour for usage and bandwidth. Yes, on the base of the load which you are having, and hourly based, you will be having the charges. And a NAT is created in a specific availability zone, and it is going to use this elastic IP address. Yeah, so you need to define that availability zone, and it is going to use it elastic IP. One static IP address is required for the NAT, and cannot be used by an instance in that subnet, only from other subnets. Yes, this NAT gateway you cannot use it in the same the subnet instances, only from other subnets which we can access. Yeah, so how do we define this is NAT gateway here also you are using is nothing but it is going to have the dependency on the internet gateway. So here how the communication is, private subnet uses the NAT gateway. NAT gateway is going to use it, internet communication point of view, internet gateway. So public subnet, we are directly mapping to the internet gateway. Public subnet, we are mapping to the internet gateway. But private subnet, we don't directly map to the internet gateway, routing table. So what do we do that? Private subnet, which will associate to the NAT, but a NAT gateway internally it is going to use it, internet gateway. So that is the point. We are not directly allowing that public access to the private subnets, but to get that internet gateway is required. But internet gateway, we are not directly associating the private subnet. That's point of view is it between the private subnets and internet gateways, NAT gateway. Yeah, so it is having the capability 5 Gbps of the bandwidth with automatic scaling up to 45 Gbps on the base of the load or the data which is transmitting through this gateway. Up to 45 gigabytes of that per second, it is going to manage that. Yeah, so far we have done public subnet with routing table, routing from the internet gateway to the public subnet. But next one is we need to launch that NAT gateway. But a NAT gateway, where do we create it is, that is in the public subnet. Yeah, suppose in the private subnet, you are going to create one EC2 instance. But to this EC2 instance, to get that internet, we don't directly allow that WWW entering into the private subnets. So here we define the NAT gateway. NAT gateway, where do we define? In the public subnets, we will create it. That is very, very important. A NAT gateway, we are not going to create it directly in the private subnets. NAT gateway of creating is nothing but you need to create that NAT gateway in the public subnet. So why do we need to have it in the public subnet? Public subnet is already having the internet gateway, right? Through this routing table to the public subnet, we are routing through the internet gateway. So indirectly, internet gateway is available to the NAT gateway. So that's point of view, NAT gateways will be launched always in the public subnet. But how do you know that which one is a public subnet? Public subnet is having that with routing table associated with the internet gateway. Yeah, NAT gateway, we will create it in the public subnets. And NAT gateway, but now through this external, the requests which are coming through this NAT gateway, we need to route into the private subnet. What do we do that? Here we will create it one routing table. This is the private routing table. Private routing table to the private subnets which will be associated. But which NAT gateway will map it? NAT gateway we will map it that. Yeah, private subnets are going to use the NAT gateway associations with routing table, and public subnets are going to have it that associations with the internet gateway. Yes, any subnet which you see that internet gateway, that is we say the public subnet, and any gateway, any subnet which is having that routing table with the NAT gateway, then that subnet we say private subnet. Yeah, now let's go for that. Yeah, DNS resolution, already we are observing that. How do we enable the DNS resolution at VPC level? Yeah, DNS support is already available, but the default this is not available DNS hostname. We are enabling that. Yeah, let's go for that. Creating now NAT gateway. First, yeah, NAT gateway, where do we have? Yes, here the NAT gateway section. So let's create NAT gateway. Creating that directory straightforward, just to give the names and some default properties. Yes, NAT gateway, this is RNS NAT gateway. And in which subnet that do you want to launch it? This is important. As we are talking that NAT gateways will be launched in the public subnets. Already associated that internet gateway. Yes, select about that. You have the public subnet 1A or 1B, any one of that which you can choose it. But choose it public subnet. Yes, I'm going to choose the public subnet 1A. And connectivity type, yes, this is the public. Because we need to get that internet to the instances which we are launching in the private subnet. Yeah, choose it connectivity type public. And elastic IP, as we're talking that elastic IP is required, but we don't have any elastic IP. Let's take it and allocate one elastic IP to this. Yes, this elastic IP has been created and associated. EIP already we are using for the EC2 instance, static IP address. So NAT gateway also you are creating is nothing but this elastic IP is required. Yeah, that's all properties. So make sure that public subnet and This is a public and with elastic IP. This is a NAT gateway creation. Let's create a NAT gateway. So this NAT gateway is using this elastic IP. Yeah, so one elastic IP has been created and this has been associated to the, still it is not associated. Yeah, once NAT gateway is ready, then we see that NAT gateway has been created. Still that is pending. So important thing is NAT gateway we are defining is nothing but that should be defined in the public subnet. Yeah, so this is a public subnet we have chosen, and this public subnet is already having that internet gateway, right? So now if you try to understand this diagram, yeah, NAT gateway we have defined in this public subnet, and this is going to use it this routing table, and through that internet gateway what are the requests which are receiving. But what we need to do that this NAT gateway we need to associate to this private subnets. So for that we go for creating separate one more routing table. This routing table is for that internet gateway and to this public subnets, and this routing table NAT gateway with private subnets. So let's define that now. Let's check it. Is it still pending? Yeah, that is available now. And yeah, that's like a elastic IPs. If you just observe that, yeah, it has been. This is the allocated IP address. So it has to be associated automatically. Okay, anyway, it is taking that's the time update for it, but it takes automatically that. Yeah, so now what is that IP address? This is 3.6.145.156. Yeah, so this is a 3.6.145.156 that has been already taken from elastic IP. So it is automatically going to take it association. Anyway, NAT gateway has been created with elastic IP, and a NAT gateway we have launched or we have created in the public sub. But what is the next one? Let's go for creating a routing table. Now the private subnets mapping to this NAT gateway. Before what we are doing, public subnets mapping to that internet gateway, we have created a public routing table. But now we are going to create a private routing table. Private routing table, private subnets, whatever you are planning here, those private subnets we will map into this NAT gateways. Yeah, let's go to the routing table. And let me create one more routing table. This is for the private. RNS private routing table. In which VPC? Yes, RNS VPC. Tags, that's fine. Let's create routing table. Yeah, anyway, this is local to this VPC, right? Yeah, so this routing table, it is allowing that as a local in this VPC. Yes, so within that VPC, any subnets can communicate it. There is no separate routing tool is required, but especially routing rule we are going to define from external. Now external as we know about it is 0000. Okay, let's go for this editing this. Yeah, within that VPC, this is local, no routing rule is required. but add the routing tool, which is coming from the external, that is any IP addresses. Now, which target we use it here? Is it internet gateway or not gateway? So we use the NAT gateway. Yes, this is about our NAT gateway which are created. Yes, now any IP address which are required as a destination to that private subnets, we are going to use it this NAT gateway. This NAT gateway is using that other routing table which is on the internet gateway. Let's save the changes. Yes, so this routing tool we have defined, but routing tool defining is not enough, but we need to map into the backend subnets. Let's go to that subnet associations. Edit subnet association. But which subnets are you going to use it through this NAT gateway? Whatever I am planning that as a private, is the private subnets which will be routed through the NAT gateway. Yes, private subnets. Save that associations. Yeah, now it is on the two subnets. Yeah, routing is NAT gateway we have defined from any IP address from the NAT gateway. We are associating to that private subnets 1A and 1B, which is defined, and this is the CADR for 1A and this is for 1B. These are all availability zones. Where do you want to launch it? That is about your choice. Is it clear now? So final conclusion, what do we have to say is public routing table is having the routing option, that is the internet gateway. And this routing table, what are the subnets which have been associated? That's we can say the public subnets. Yes, public subnets which will be mapped through the internet gateway. Like that, private subnets, whatever we are planning that, yes, now these two private subnets are routing from the NAT gateway. Yeah, private subnets contain the NAT gateway and public subnets contain the internet gateway. That is the main point in the routing table. Yes, we are good now. Let's go back and create one EC2 instance in the private subnet. And how do we access it? And whether the net is available or not, we will check it. So let's go back to the, so the EC2 management console. Now I'm going to launch one more EC2 instance in the private subnet. Let me give the name to this. This is private one, private EC2 instance. Let me use it AMI, Amazon Linux to AMI. And T2 micro, that's fine. Key pair, already we have created the key pair, right, before. Let me use that same key pair, but before that, let me change the network. As which network we are going to use it? RNS VPC. And within that, we are planning to launch it private subnet. So this is EC2 instance, okay, that is required as a privately. That's yes, we are going to define that in the private. And we don't enable the public IP address. We don't assign this public IP. Yeah, let's disable that. This is recommended, right? Public IP address, we don't assign it. They're all we are launching this in the private, only external. Okay, so let's choose the key pair also. The key pair, just we have created RNS VPC. I'm going to use the same key pair to connect to this instance. And security group also we have created already. Let me use it the same security group. Yeah, this is a security group. Yeah, so these are all main things. I'm launching this in our VPC in the private subnet. And we are not going to assign the public IP address this. Then how do you access this instance? That's will come back. And security group is required, SH allowing that. The remaining, that is leave it. Yes, let's launch the instance. Now what we have done is, if you just observe this diagram, now we have launched that EC2 instance in the private subnet. But we didn't enable that any public IP. But this one is on the public IP. Now we can connect it to this EC2 instance, right? From this EC2 instance, now I can access this EC2 instance. Because we don't give this one directly through internet. But if you have this instance in the public, yes, from that you can access it, because all these subnets are the local, because they're all in the same VPC. So this EC2 can communicate to this EC2 instance, no issues, because they're all the local to each other. But anyone is trying that external, this one we are not allowing directly, but they can access this one. This one, I mean, from internal this one, we will try to access this one. We don't go for that directly giving that external this one. So now what do we do? That is to access this EC2 instance. Now we need to log into the public, and from the public we can access the private one. This one we say that Bastion instance. So this is the Bastion instance now. Now we can log in it from anywhere to this EC2 instance, and from here I can access that the instances which are in the private subnets. Yeah, let's test it that. Now EC2 instance has been launched, private one also. But you see, if you observe that, whether it is having any public IP address, no public IP address, no public DNS name, only private is available. Now you see that the network ID also 10016. So about our private subnet, if you just observe that 1A, yeah, 1A 10016. So this is the network, and the 0 last octet. So what is the IP address? 215. Some random ID has been taken from that 0 to 255 out of that. First 4 it is not going to use it, and last one it is not going to use it, right? As we're talking that the 5 IP addresses are not going to use it from the each subnet. Yeah, still that is initiating. Meanwhile, what do we do? That is, we will access this public EC2 instance. Yes, we have the public IP address. Let's connect it. Already we have connected. Yes, already we have connected. Now this is in the 1001. 1001, 1002, we have defined for the public subnets. 10016, 10017, we have defined for the private subnets. Yeah, now this is public instance, and we are able to get that internet. Fine, we are good. Now let's try to access. How do we access that? The remote system with sh ec2 user at the rate of IP address of this instance. That is a private instance. So this is the, we are using the private IP address here. We are not using the public IPs. Now anyway, this is internal to that VPC, right? This IP address, which will be allowed. Yeah, so now we are trying to connect it from this subnet, which is in the public subnet. Yes, this is the public subnet IP 1001, and we are trying to access the 10016. Let's see that. Yes, it is asking the confirmation, I mean the post key verification, yes, but it is permission denied. Permission why it is denied? Key pair is required. Key pair is required, right? Yes, now let's go back to that about our Windows system, and let's get that, or let me do one thing. If I go to here, and can I copy that? Yes, here you can see that upload to the current folder. Yes, that's a private key, whatever we have created, that is rnsvpc.pem file. That pem file key, I need to have it in this folder. So what is that? Like other option is, I mean, you can copy from here, or you can directly go to the about downloads folder. Let me go to that downloads folder. And this is about our VPC PEM file. Just we have downloaded. Let's select this one. And let's open with this notepad. And let's copy this key. And let's go back to the server. Create one file with the same name or different name. You can use it, whatever it is. So this is vpc.pem file, some name. But .pem is the extension that is required. And let's copy that key which you have copied in that file and save this one. Yeah, this is vpc.pem file which I created, or you can directly upload from here also. Yes, you can use it, upload to the current folder, browsing that, the PEM file. But this PEM file should have that permissions. Suppose if I directly use this one, now whenever I'm running that, how do you pass it? The key -I and vpc.pem is the file. So SSH-I, that is a PEM file location, and which user we are trying to use it to connect to this? EC2 user, and this is the IP address of the system. Now it is saying this bad permissions. You see that? This is the bad permissions. Bad permissions in the sense that file is required to set that 400. So use it 400 settings. Now use it that file. Yes, now we are able to connect it to that this system 10.0.16.215. Now we are in that the EC2 instance which is in the private subnet. But is it getting that internet or not? Let's check it. Suppose now 10.0.16. What is this? This is the private subnet, right? Now if we just observe that's in the subnet section, 1A which is having 10.0.1. This is the public subnet. Another public subnet which is having 10.0.2. But private subnet 1A, 1B contains 16 and 17. Just to understand it, just note it. 10.0.1, that is the public subnet 1A. 10.0.16 or 17, they're all the private subnets. Yeah, now we are in that, which is system 10.0.16. That is a private subnet in that EC2 instance. If I try to ping it, ping google.com, whether I'm able to connect to that internet from this EC2? Yes, we are able to connect it. We're able to ping it to the internet. And we can download the packages. We can install the packages, no issues. But it didn't give this one is a public. This instance, directly we didn't give the public. Public IP address, we didn't enable it on this, right? But we are able to get the internet. How we are able to get it? NAT Gateway is helping that. Suppose what I do that is to test this. I go to this routing table. We have created the routing table for the private subnets, right? To get that internet. So let's go to this private routing table. In the route section, edit routes. This is having the NAT gateway, right? NAT gateway is helping to get internet to the private subnets. Now I just remove this one in the routing table. Yeah, so in the routes option, we just define the only local. We didn't define any external communications. And what are the subnets we have? 2 private subnets. Now the instances which are in the private subnets, are they going to get it internet? Let's check it now. Let's go back to that instance. Now you see this, it is stopped pinging to this one. It is stopped. We are able to access the system, no issues, but it is not pinging the Google. That means internet is stopped because there is no NAT gateway. These 2 private subnets are not routing from the NAT gateway. We have removed it. but those are all only local VPC. Those are all available. Now I can exit from here. I can access from public subnet. This is my public subnet instance, and I'm going to access the private sub instance. I'm able to access it. Instance, I'm able to access it, no issues, because these are all the local to each other. But net is not available because NAT gateway is not associated to that routing table. Now let me go back and let me associate the NAT gateway to this. Yeah, if I go to this route options, so now it is local, it is working fine. Local it is routing, but net is not available. So all IP addresses, we use it NAT gateway. This is the NAT gateway. Let's save the changes. And after saving, and if you go back to that instance, now you see this instance has been started to ping to that internet. Yeah, how we are getting internet to the private subnet resources is that is through the NAT gateway. And how we are getting that internet to that public subnet instances is that is through the internet gateway. But NAT gateway is also going to use it internally, internet gateway. That's why we need to launch it the NAT gateway in the public subnet. Yeah, so these are all the main components the which we have this in the VPC. That is about VPC creation, subnets creations, routing tables, internet gateways, elastic IPs, and the NAT gateways. And in the VPC settings, enabling the DNS host names, and subnets level enabling that. Do you want to enable that public IP address to the EC2 instances or not? That is at a subnet level. Yeah, these are all some important configurations which we should know it from the VPC's point of view. Is it clear about this? How to create public, private, subnets, and internet gateway, NAT gateways, and how do you associate that internet gateway and the NAT gateways to the public subnets and private subnets. Internet gateways will be used to that. Now we can understand, okay, the subnets, these two subnets, which are routing from the NAT gateway, that's nothing but these two subnets are the private subnets. By having the name, don't depend on that names. By referring the name, no, we should not say that is a private subnet or public subnet. But how do you say that which one is a public subnet or which one is a private subnet is? So if you go to that like a route option in the routing, the NAT gateway is defined to the subnets. The subnets which are having the NAT gateway, we can say that's those are all private. And the NAT gateway, I mean the subnets, there are the two subnets which are routing the request from the external through that internet gateway. Then these two subnets which we can say public subnets. Yeah, on the base of the gateways which are associated to the subnets, we decide about that which one is a public subnet, which one is a private subnet. Are you clear at this point? I'm going to terminate the instances. But we have one point like NACL. That's NACL. What is that NACL? And when do we use that NACL? That's I will conclude on Monday. Some section that doesn't take much time. And the difference between the NACL and security groups, we will talk it. That's on Monday. And then we'll start it CloudWatch. That is a monitoring service. Yeah, deletion point of view, the first delete that EC2 instances which are launched. Then go for the VPCs, the NAT gateway delete it first. Otherwise, if you don't delete the NAT gateway and if you directly delete the VPC, it doesn't accept it. Yeah, first, suppose if you go to the your VPCs and if you try to delete this VPC, yeah, it doesn't accept it because it is referring that network interfaces. And the NAT gateway is also referring that. You cannot delete the VPC directly. And in the resource map, you see that, yes, this is a VPC. And we have created in AP South 1A 2 subnets. One is public and another one is private. And AP South 1B 2 subnets. And there are all the routing tables which are associated. Yeah, the private routing table. So these two routing tables, so these two routing tables which are associated to this subnet 1A and subnet 1B. And this routing table, yes, these two. And now if you go back to that, yes, we have this like internet gateway. Internet gateway through this routing table, it is associated to these two subnets, and a NAT gateway, which has been mapped through this routing table to these two subnets. Yeah, the internet gateway, the subnets which are associated, we can say those are all the public, and the NAT gateway, the subnets which are associated through this routing table, those we say private. That's about overall resource mapping, which we can see this in the VPC section. Let me delete the first NAT gateway. Yeah, it takes some time. Once NAT gateway has been deleted, make sure that about your elastic IP also has been deleted. This is very, very important. So if by mistake, if you don't delete that elastic IP or if you forget that, then it will be chargeable. But you need to wait until the NAT gateway is completely deleted. Otherwise, you cannot release that one. Yeah, this has been deleted, NAT gateway. And let's go for that elastic IP. But still elastic IP is there. Then what you can do, you can release this elastic IP address. But still it is a hand the reference. It is referring that internal references. Yes, still it is not released this IP address. Yeah, now it has been released. Let's release this elastic IP. Yes, that's we have deleted the elastic IP. We are good. Now let's go back. And the remaining routing table subnets, you don't need to delete it one by one. Go to that VPC. Then select that the VPC. Directly delete that VPC. This is going to delete all the subnets and everything. Yes. So the 4 subnets it is going to deleting, and gateway, internet gateway also, and routing tables which are created. Yes, just confirm that. This is about cleaning up the resources. Yeah, now we have this only default VPC. We are good. Yeah, that's about the VPC important components which we should know. That's subnets with routing tables, internet gateways, NAT gateways, elastic IPs, and public IP address enabling, disabling at subnets level, and DNS host names enabling or disabling at VPC level. Yeah, these are all some important sections in the VPC. Yeah, that's all from my side for today. Yes, any queries, questions, please let me know. But before going to close it, how got these points? And try to practice this one. End of this weekend, I'll share it to the lab guide of this VPC. So please go ahead and complete that. Yeah, are you clear about this? Yeah, good. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to wind up for today, and we'll meet on Monday and we'll continue that.